Good afternoon, everybody. It's Andrew Cooperrider here for the podcast, Andrew Cooperrider podcast. Thank you guys so much for joining us on Facebook or YouTube, or maybe you're listening to this in the podcast form. It's available on Spotify and Apple. Regardless of where you're listening at, you can support us by hitting the like, comment, sharing, engaging with it. And it certainly helps us out quite a bit, increases our reach, and obviously shows appreciation for what we're doing, shows us you're engaged. So please be sharing it, commenting, and everything else as we bring you the news and commentary specific to Kentucky with a Liberty side of things. Also, as well as the ticker says at the bottom, unless you have, I believe it's Appalachian Wireless, but if you have any other carrier, you should be able to text the word Liberty to 33777. That's Liberty to 33777 to get on our text list, where we will have calls to actions as well as notifications about our podcast here as well. But that's really key for especially going into legislative session, being able to get on that where you can quickly call in and share with other people when there's bills or things like that being considered that certainly need to be taken care of with a quick response. So please text Liberty to 33777. Thousands of people already have. You can join them. Text Liberty to 33777. I thank you guys so much for joining us, and we've got a couple of great topics to cover today. We'll be talking about a little whoopsie daisy from Woodford County Health Department, which just goes to show who's running our government and who's involved, and kind of covers that. We've got some recounts going on that Michael Adams, Secretary of State Michael Adams, upset about. We'll want to talk about that. Abortionists upset that, well, not upset, but desiring more men to be involved with being pro-abortion, which is ironic. We've got a Charles Booker ad sowing division and hate, as well as we're going to talk a little bit about economics real quick, just something I thought was kind of important. But first, we're going to start off asking who is really running our government. So I remember once I was listening to Congressman Thomas Massie speak, and he was talking about how no matter who's in charge, no matter who you elect, no matter what, the problem is only about 5 to 10% of those working in our government ever change. And 90 to 95% of the government, but not just government, but the staffers up on DC, how they don't change. And so it doesn't matter who you put in there as much, because you have this built up kind of quote unquote, that's the deep state, what we're referring to when we mention the deep state. It is these 90 to 95% of staff on Capitol Hill that is running everything. But we have it right here in Kentucky as well. Let me show you something here. So the other day, just past week or so, Woodford County Health Department, those of you watching online can see I've thrown up the post. I'm going to kind of read it to you. It may be a little fuzzy for some of y'all, but and those listening online or audio only form, kind of I'll cover it for you guys here. But Woodford County Health Department had up for this screenshot was grabbed 24 minutes afterwards, until somebody caught it. But it says, if you're like me, this is from let's see, the 26th, May 26th. If you're like me, you need a call to action to help you move through the anger and frustration and powerlessness you feel given the recent tragedy in Texas. Like Texas, Kentucky has some of the weakest gun laws in the country. Not surprisingly, we have the 14th highest firearm death rate in the United States. Kentucky legislators have a plan, though. Their solution to school shootings is to require but not fund. That's not quite accurate, but okay. I believe our last budget did have funding for school resource officers. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it does. Anyways, actually, in fact, I kind of know it does. Yeah, it does. if I'm wrong, somebody correct me, but I'm almost 100% positive that they included in their bill funding for school resource officers. In fact, they require it in this last bill. So this has already happened. But anyways, moving on with the post. SRO officers, that's school resource officers, in every school while allowing gun enthusiasts to avoid background checks by purchasing firearms from private dealers. No background check, no permit, no training, no problem. But that's not all. They want to make sure school resource officers can't enforce any federal gun regulations. And then they go on to talk about how what's called Second Amendment sanctuary state legislation that would nullify any federal gun law overreach. Good legislation that means that whenever that we don't have to worry about the Democrats there throwing in place gun control regulations that are unconstitutional and being able to put a check in there. And then she goes on to lambast Representative Dan Pfister. Now, this is all the Woodford County Health Department. Say she, because I'll get to what Woodford County Health Department said about this. But this was all posted under Woodford County Health Department's page. This is their official page, government tax dollar page, right? And this was posted in the middle of the day. But anyways, and then they go on and talk about Representative Dan Pfister and how he's whatever. He's awful. Now, anybody who's met Dan Pfister like I have can tell you Dan Pfister is one of the nicest guys. He's a really nice guy. I don't think Dan's a real good guy. He's passionate about his outdoors. In fact, in his office, he's got a little deer, little mounted deer. It's kind of small, and I gave him a hard time about it, and then he told me a story about it, and I felt worse. But he's even got deer mounts in his office, their legislative office, and everything else. So he's just real passionate about the outdoors. But of course, he's terrible for being passionate about the outdoors, according to the Woodford County Health Department. That's right, his own district. So then this goes on with a call to action. Channel your frustration into action and educate yourself and everyone you know about the legislature's plan to make Kentucky more dangerous. And then join me in a call to action. We have 2 items. This is the Woodford County Health Department page. I'm going to reiterate this as I go to these 2 items. Here's the first. Volunteer to help Mayor Grayson Vandergriff defeat House Bill 29 sponsor Representative Dan Pfister. The Woodford County Health Department, using taxpayer funds, is encouraging voters to work for Dan Pfister's Democrat opponent. Writer, call the following members of the Senate committee, and then it goes on to tell you who to call and who to get upset about. Here's the deal. Okay, here's what's so important about all this. Okay, now the Woodford County came out and they said, "Oh no, the person running our socials, they confused their personal and what they were supposed to be posting for us, and they put so first that tells you right away, the people, the administration at the health department are actively encouraging people to work against the representative. Now, normally this kind of behavior from the right, I guarantee you would get you fired. But when it comes from the left, it is welcomed. I'll point to another example of this that happened that wasn't just a Facebook post mistake, but in Jessamine County, there was the school charter bill this last session. And when it was set up, it was vetoed, and then I was coming up for another vote. The school, using taxpayer funds, using the email list given to them by the fact that they are the school board, and you had to give them your email and you sign up your kids, sent out an email to every email they had from the school superintendent telling people to call and lobby against that bill, to lobby against a school choice bill. Guys, that is taxpayer funded activism right there. And the left does this kind of thing all the time. We see them having us fund their activism with our dollars constantly, and yet nothing happens. Here in this case, Woodford County said, oops, our bad, our health department, our bad. I tell you what, this much right now, it's not enough to just say our bad. It's not enough to say that. Once and for all, we have to say, no longer are we going to have taxpayer funded activism. This person made this post in the middle of a work day, and they accidentally posted it, and it was up for at least, according to that screenshot I showed you, 24 minutes, advocating for the defeat of the current state representative for that area, Dan Pfister. Not only does that hurt the ability for the health department to interact with their state representatives because they, as a governmental agency, have taken sides in an election. Now, of course, Dan's such a nice guy. He'll move on, say, hey, it happens. It's okay. Anybody who knows Dan knows that that's the way he responds to things. But to think that this kind of thing goes on and it's just, it's okay. We have activists working in our government. We have activists, and here's the thing, they fulfill roles on all these boards and volunteer for all these boards and things conservatives don't do as often. They also will fight, as we can see, these corporations as they all change their logo to the Pride Month rainbow. And I saw a post online the other day that really summed it up for me. Quite simply put, they believe in their religion more than we believe in ours. Our religion of Christianity, our religion of believing in God, Jesus our Savior. Maybe that's your religion. Maybe your religion is different. Maybe it's a different belief system. That's okay. But their belief and their system is a belief in the state. The state is your Savior. That is their belief. That is their religion, the religion of the state. And these people believe in using the state to accomplish their goals more than we believe in not allowing the state to accomplish their goals. And I just think that really kind of sums it up. As we see these people working in government, who works for our government, it doesn't matter as often as we elect people and everything else, as long as we allow these kinds of activists to continue to take roles and be taxpayer funded in our government and use the funds and resources we're providing them as taxpayers for their activism, this will continue. You even see it. You see it with these teachers unions and things like that. People who aren't even teachers, just very high paid administrators, like way high paid for what they're doing, that say some of the grossest and meanest things online, but yet are being funded by taxpayers in their day-to-day, fulfilling roles like PR and things like that for school districts. It's frankly, we can't allow this to continue. If you're going to fulfill a role, a governmental role, I can tell you this, when I'm out, when I was out campaigning and stuff, knocking doors or what have you, if somebody worked for the government and they were on the right and you asked them if they want to put a yard sign out or something like that, they'd say, no, I can't do it. It's against the rules. And I say, hey, I understand that. You can't put it out there. Right? You can't be super loud like that. When people were off duty and didn't even go inside the Capitol, but went to January 6's, the demonstration there, the rally there, but didn't do anything in the Capitol, nothing toward, nothing illegal, nothing even close to it. But the very fact they showed up, let go. I believe here in Kentucky, we had that police officer who, what did he do? He burned a UK jersey, I believe. Something like that over something. Now, he didn't do it as an official play. He did it on his private Facebook page. He was held accountable for that because he's on the right. But if you're on the left, it's okay, apparently. You're all right to do that. And so I just want to start off by pointing that Woodford County certainly made a mistake there with their social media. I'd be curious to see what the repercussions are. And if I was Dan Pfister, I'd certainly be pretty upset. Of course, Dan's a good guy. But at the same time, we have to get involved and be willing to be as loud and as active as they are. The quote-unquote silent majority, we cannot be silent any longer. That's why I wanted to encourage you guys once again. If you please text Liberty to 33777. Maybe you're passionate about it, but you don't know what to do. Text Liberty to 33777. We'll let you know when something real important is coming up. But we just got to be really active. Okay, so enough with that. Let's move on to the next story here. We've got Secretary of State Adams. Here we got Kentucky Secretary of State. This is from the Courier-Journal. Article wrote by Joe Sonka. Kentucky Secretary of State will push bill to stop frivolous vote recount petitions. Now, what is he talking about? Well, let me tell you what he's talking about. So what's he say frivolous? Okay, well, we'll go to what Michael Adams, what law he wants to see. and he's going to be pushing for in the 2023 session. And this goes once again. And I was just talking about staying active because, frankly, what Adams is pushing, we cannot let happen. Certainly, with the parameters he's putting on, it doesn't make any sense at all. But let's see what he's talking about. Frivolous recounts. So there's a couple of recounts going on. One from Bridget Elley, who lost to the House Speaker David Osborne. According to the vote totals there, she lost 68% to 32%. We had a state house candidate, Courtney Gilbert, which filed a recount petition that she lost 68-32. Jacob Clark, we talked about some of these last week, he lost 57-43. Jessica Neal, she lost by 39-36 to Shelley Frummeyer, the winner there, only 307 votes there. And Rhonda Palazzo ran the primary. She lost 29.5% to 29.4%. So that's only 58 votes across the entire. That was in Jefferson County too, because that's congressional district number 3. And then also we've got a recount from Sereno. I believe he only took 6% of the vote against Hal Rogers. So you may be thinking, okay, so some of these people lost by a pretty sizable percentage. Some of these people lost by a smaller percentage. But the Michael Adams calls these frivolous, and he says we got to fight against them. Now, I could be saying, you know what? I could see expending taxpayer funds to audit an election that was 70-30 would be frivolous. And that'd be a waste of money. I could see that argument. But here's the thing. These recounts are done at these petitioners' expense. So like Bridget Elley, for example, if she's requesting this recount, she has to pay for that recount. It's not done at taxpayer expense. Taxpayer doesn't have to pay for this. So Michael Adams is just, I guess, annoyed that it's going on. We'll kind of talk about what he's we'll kind of talk about what he's annoyed by here. So and what the thing, why his reaction kind of seems a little strange to me. So he's reacting and he's like upset. He's reacting at these people paying for their own recounts with desire to pass a new law. Keep in mind, once again, they're paying for it themselves. This is one of those things where I take the position, no harm, no foul. Who cares? Why do you care? If they want to pay for it themselves and get a recount, then let them do it. But he's reacting this way. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a conspiracy. Let's keep in mind that we had several races up in northern Kentucky and also some around, such as Rebecca Ramers or Hodgson's in their kind of Louisville area, where individuals that were not the establishment's pick one, that were the Liberty candidates, won. Additionally, as well, like I said, unseated 3 incumbents, influential incumbents too, as well. Certainly leaders amongst the establishment up there, certainly people that if they wanted to throw election for, probably would do it for them. So it doesn't necessarily mean that Adams' reaction may not necessarily be part of a grand conspiracy. We actually have a couple of different choices for motivation here that aren't involved with a conspiracy. Okay. So one, something that may be the case, and I see this from time to time when I see Adams reacting to campaign stuff, it's not just, it seems like it's not just a position of informing, but almost a position of pride. Like he personally feels attacked if individuals cast doubt, any shred of doubt on any elections going on in Kentucky. Now, let's keep in mind, the Secretary of State himself does not conduct any elections. The county clerks in each county conduct the election. So, for an example, if there's an issue in Bridget Elley's recount that shows something was off for Jacob Clark's or Jessica Neal's, that doesn't reflect necessarily badly on Adams, not unless the county asked him for help with something and he responded and he was incorrect, because it's those county clerks that conduct that. And these recounts are done under check the tech ideas, basically saying, look, I want people to feel more secure in the outcome. In fact, Bridget Elley hasn't even said she feels like it will change the outcome of the election. It's more so to make other people feel confident and secure. We've seen a lot of things on election integrity. We see some new laws that have been passed this past session and session before out of our General Assembly. They want to see, hey, has this helped? Is it accurate? How accurate are these elections? Let's do a recount to find out. But it's like Adams is taking it personal. Some of his responses. So it could be some personal pride, believing that if somebody questions an election, somehow questioning him, even though he doesn't conduct it, or maybe he thinks it'll reflect badly on him. That's a possibility. There could be also a possibility amongst the Republican, quote unquote, establishment, whatever you want to call it, that questioning elections may hurt Republicans in generals. So, like we saw this down in Georgia, where the belief is that the questioning of the election led to lower turnout. Who knows what happened? Obviously, I think it's perfectly okay to investigate and question elections. Part of the problem with all this election integrity things, and I was one time seeing J.P. Sears. He was speaking. He was doing a little bit of a stand-up thing, and he said, the fact he made a joke about the fact that we're not allowed to talk about any kind of election fraud makes him feel like it happened, because if it didn't happen, we'd be able to talk. And I relate that too to, like, take for an example how we deal with like flat earth. Sorry to anybody that believes there's a flat earth, but I think that's an very different belief. But you don't see that being banned. You don't see it's not banned to talk about flat earth. If anything, to you flat earthers, the fact that Facebook and them don't fact check it or whatever and allow you to talk about flat earth as much as you'd like, and there's no big public groups come together to say, no, that's not true, should tell you that the earth is round and not flat, because they're not pushing back on it. So they're just like, that's kind of an interesting idea. We'll just let it flow. That would just be me. But my point is that the fact we're not allowed to question it actually creates more belief of a conspiracy. Now, it could be that they want this talk about elections being off to stop because they're worried about turnout, or it could be the exact opposite. Actually, he could be, and this is maybe a tiny bit conspiratorial, Adams could be responding this way because the quote unquote what they believe is liberty Republicans or what have you, or populist Republicans, whatever you want to call it, they're more likely to not trust outcomes of elections than the more establishment Republicans. And because of that, they want those individuals, they don't want them to be able to check it or anything else, because they want them to think it's not accurate or free and fair and has integrity. Though I think, election integrity can mean a lot of things. We've talked about this in prior podcasts about anything from, doesn't mean necessarily machine issues, but conduction at the polls and things like that. The way they conduct themselves can throw off elections in legal matters too, as well. But the point is that maybe the point is to not allow them to check it, because if they check it and dig in and everything's accurate and completely on point, there's those people that believe, well, elections are thrown off. It doesn't matter if I show up or vote anyway. Suddenly they start showing up to vote more, and the establishment starts losing more. That can certainly be part of the thought process. It doesn't necessarily have to be conspiracy, because like I said, we had victories all over the state that definitely were not the establishment picks. So, you can't say that there's necessarily a grand conspiracy to change the outcome of elections per se. But there could be, his response is weird. His response is weird, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a conspiracy for his response. But I can tell you this much too: responding in a way where you want to pass a new law. I'm going to tell you what this new law here is in a second. Certainly is troublesome and can lead to people believing there's a conspiracy there when there isn't. And maybe there is a conspiracy there because of this response. And his response is to try to get a law passed that says that in order for you to pay for your own recount. So like if I, having ran, wanted to go and ask for a recount, and I'm paying for it myself, but in order for me, something that doesn't cost the state anything, well, doesn't cost the state much at all because I'm paying for it. In order for me to pay as a candidate for the ballots to be recounted, he wants there to be less than a 1% spread. Now, that's right. He says that the only way you can, any kind of recount, question an election, look at the results at all in Kentucky, the law he wants passed says it's got to be less than 1%. Now, how much is that? Well, let's talk about how much that is. So in some of these state house races, you could see as low as 3,000 votes cast. That's not super uncommon. You could see anywhere between 3,000 to 4,000, depending on what's going on locally and everything else. But let's rewind. How much is 1%? So 1,000 votes, less than a 1% margin, would be only 10 votes. So pretty much if you got 11 votes or more than your opponent, you would have greater than 1%. Okay. So because, 1,000, quick math for those who want to doubt me, 10% of 1,000 is 100. 1% of that, of 1,000 then would be 10. Okay. Everybody's with me. So that would be more than 11 votes on 1,000 votes cast. Now you may say, well, that's 11 votes. That's 11 miscounted ballots. That seems high. It's not 11 miscounted ballots, though. It's actually only 6. Follow me. Okay, so if let's say there's an election, 50 votes cast, and it was 30-20. Okay, so you got 20 votes, I got 30 votes. And let's say we're doing a recount. Well, if one vote was miscounted incorrectly, it wouldn't be, so we've got a 20 vote spread. It wouldn't be 30-20. It would now be 29 to 21. Now it becomes an 8 vote spread because when you take one out of one category and put it in the other, it actually shrinks the margin by 2. So a less than 1% on 1,000 would only require, to get over 1% on 1,000 votes would only require 6 miscounted votes. 6. That's right. 6. It's not a whole lot when you're looking at it there. Certainly, I don't think so. When we're talking about 6 miscounted votes out of 1,000 to get to 1%, that's not a whole lot. And so when we're talking about such a small amount there. So what's amplify that? So some of these are state house races. Now keep in mind, these laws would cover local elections as well. So local elections where there's 500-600 votes cast, you're talking 5-6 votes. That's it. That's the difference. Anything beyond that, and it starts to be like, you can't audit it. So at these 3,000, when we're talking about these state house races that have 3,000 votes cast, that's only has to be 18 out of 3,000 votes miscounted. That's not very significant. And he's saying more than that. So if you have 19 miscounted votes out of 3,000, it wouldn't be able to be audited. That's a very low threshold. And why is he? And that's what makes me think that feeds into the conspiracy side of things. That also, on the same hand, also can feed into the pride side of things. Like, well, I mean, there's no possible way we miscounted, 6 out of 1,000 ballots. That just doesn't happen. It's possible. We've seen it. And so his reaction is very, very odd, certainly to take place. Very, very odd. I say just let him count it. Also, I say this 1% law he's going to try to get passed that I'm sure a lot of the establishment there will vote on, jump on board with and try to get done too as well. We have got to stand against that. That is just way too low of a threshold to even start to talk about. And frankly, if they're paying for it for themselves, why limit it at all? Who actually cares? Just let them count it. I get it. I get that a 6 getting 6% of the vote and your opponent that won getting like 80% of the vote is a huge margin on thousands upon thousands of votes, like in the Serino and Hal Rogers recount. I get that. And that can seem crazy to a lot of people to want to recount that, but it's, to some people, it's not. And just let them do it. At least do it. And then they might actually get some faith in their elections. Let them do it. If you're not letting them do it, why? Is it pride? Is it conspiracy? Is it you're trying to suppress people that may question the outcome of votes from turning out, where they believe their votes don't matter because it's predetermined? Are you trying to feed into that? The response is ridiculous. And if the GOP is actually interested in actually turning out as many people as they can, because they need them to win in generals all across this country, and including in Kentucky, you need them showing up. You better make them feel secure in their elections. Let them count. Just let them count. It's not a big deal. So moving on from that, we've got an article here that I saw, Herald Leader. Funny enough, this was under health and medicine. Abortion rights advocates say they need more men's voices. Abortion rights advocates say they need more men's voices. First off, that's under health and medicine, not politics, in the Herald Leader. But so abortion rights activists say they need more men's voices, which makes me think this t-shirt here is going to have a lot of returns. It says no uterus, no opinion, as a picture of a uterus giving an obscene gesture. I think you're giving us some mixed signals here, okay? Because I was told recently that, as these abortion debates have gone on, that if you don't have a uterus, you don't have an opinion. Apparently, though, if you have no uterus but the right opinion, you may, in fact, then speak. So I think me not having a uterus has nothing to do with my opinion on abortions in your mind, whether or not you should listen to them. I think it's just because of the fact I have a different opinion than you, and you're trying to find a reason to discard it. But yet, here we are, and this was actually an article that was wrote by the Associated Press that the Herald Leader ran. Here you are saying you need more men's voices. It's almost like men also vote and have opinions too. And you need more of them in order to protect abortion rights. But like I said, you got no uterus, you got no opinion. Why are you surprised because not even all women agree with you? Not even close to all women agree with you. And then you're turning around to any man who would have supported you. You're sitting there telling them, your opinion doesn't matter. So why would they come out? They don't care. They don't care because you told them not to care. You told them if they on your side of the issue, people who would be with you told you them, if you don't have a uterus, you don't have a voice. So they were like, well, the people that I support tell me not to show up, so I'm not going to. And then you're surprised when people on our side show up because we're telling them they all have a voice and they all matter, including the unborn. No wonder why you're losing. Anyways, I just thought that was funny that in a non-political section, we have the abortion rights activists saying they need more men's voices. How the turntables have turned. You're going to have to be returning your no uterus, no opinion shirts. I tell you that much right here. In other news, we have Booker putting out a nice campaign video. We're going to play that for you here. I throw this video up to play for people. On the front there, it says, content warning. This video contains strong imagery. Viewer discretion is advised. It's about a minute long. I will describe kind of what happened to the video for those audio-only listeners here in a second, but let's go ahead and give that a play.
The pain of our past.
So you got a noose hanging there.
To this day. In Kentucky, like many states throughout the South, lynching was a tool of terror. It was used to kill hopes for freedom. It was used to kill my ancestors.
Charles Booker has a noose around his neck.
In a historic victory for our Commonwealth, I have become the first Black Kentuckian.
He's standing with a noose around his neck tied up to a tree above him.
Senate. My opponent, the very person who compared expanded health care to slavery. The person who said he would have opposed the Civil Rights Act. the person who single-handedly blocked an anti-lynching act from being federal law. The choice couldn't be clearer. Do we move forward together, or do we let politicians like Rand Paul forever hold us back and drive us apart? In November, we will choose healing. We will choose Kentucky.
Well, that's one way to run a campaign. I certainly say that. So, for those listening audio only, there was a noose. He was staying with a noose around his neck as he went through what he talked about. Now, real quick, when he put that out there, he tweeted it out with this tweet that says this as well. It says, lynching is a tool of terror. It was used to kill hopes for freedom. In Kentucky, it was used to kill 3 of my uncles. In this historic election, the choice is clear. Rand Paul may want to divide us, but hate won't win this time. It's time to move forward together. So, according to, I've seen some different time frames, but this is according to genealogy trails. The last lynching in Kentucky was in 1926. I've seen some ones that were earlier. I've seen a couple of dates later that people have thrown out there. I haven't seen them sourced. But regardless, any date I've seen, I've never seen a date beyond 1940. I am confused on how 3 of Charles Booker's uncles were killed by lynching in Kentucky, when the last one was pre-1940. That is 60 years ago. So Charles Booker was born, I believe, mid-1980s. So if his father had him, even at the very, very young age of, let's say, 16, he had him at. Or mother. Whoever, I don't know which side of the family it is. We're just doing some simple math. So let's say they had him at the age of 16. Let's say they had him at the very old age of 60. Let's say for some reason his parents had a child at 60, right? That would mean they were born in 1925. And so his parents would have had to have him at 60. And then they would have had to have been born 20 years apart-ish from their 3 uncles that were then lynched. In order for him to have uncles that were lynched in 1926, they would have had to have 3 uncles 20 years older than his parents, if his parents had him at the age of 60. And I believe they did not have him at 60. And I think that may not be accurate, but of course, who cares? You can just throw out there apparently that your uncles were lynched, and people are just like, okay, yeah, I believe that. Nobody calls them out on it because they're too nervous too afraid to. I'm not. I'll tell you right now, that is not accurate. He lied. There's no way that is accurate. He did not have 3 uncles that were lynched. That's not possible. Not when the last lynching was in like 1926. That's just not possible. It doesn't even make mathematical sense. And what I find ironic too is he talks about how Rand somehow trying to divide us. It's not even factually true. What he said is not even factually correct. Rand Paul is if you're going to look at people on the racist scale, I guess, on Republicans by this warped sense that Democrats have that anybody who disagrees with them must be racist, Rand Paul is not super high on the list. He's the sponsor of the Breonna Taylor bill to deal with no-knock warrants. Something Black Lives Matter was very upset about. He ran the bill for that. And yes, in 2020, he held up a lynching bill, but he was a co-sponsor of one in 2022 because the bill in 2020 was not very clear, did not have strong language. Okay, it was very broad. It was a very broad bill that would have confused some different concerns. So, of course, he passed that there in 2022. He was a co-sponsor of it. So it's not even accurate. But I find it funny, not funny, but sad that we have a video where he's clearly trying to take a line of racial politics because that's apparently the only chance he thinks he has. I guess he's going to try to convince Kentuckians that if they don't vote for him, they're racist, because that's what he's saying. What he's saying is I'm not trying to divide you, and we're trying to end racism in Kentucky. And Rand Paul is racist. So if you vote for him, you're voting for a racist and you're trying to divide us. He's standing with a noose around his neck when the last lynching was almost 100 years ago, and trying to use that for political imagery to garner votes because of his skin pigment. And he wants to say, we're the ones dividing things? Are you out of your mind? That's divisive. And not only one, he knows he's not going to win, so he's going for shock value as much as possible. And, it's funny, too, because he makes a lot of money off of this campaign. He does. He pays himself a salary, pays his wife a salary. Last I saw, it was over $100,000 each a year that they're being paid out of their own campaigns. Significant amounts of money. And he's the one dividing us. Continuing to make skin color a point of an election. Continuing to play these games. And you know what? If you're considering voting for Booker, you can't now. I'm sorry. You got to look at that and say, I can't do this. I can't vote for a person who's going to continue to play these racist politics. He's just trying to divide people up by their skin color. That's what he's doing. And it's wrong. And we can't support somebody doing that. It's wrong. It's just wrong. I am flabbergasted that shows that nobody calls him out for the fact that he definitely doesn't have 3 uncles that were lynched too. That is insane to me. All right. So I thought for a second we would talk a little bit about economics, just real quick, about Keynesian versus Austrian economics, or as I like to call it, the touch it more versus stop touching it economics. And to understand what's kind of going on, because we in the Republican Party, there is a separation. They call it Liberty Republicans or establishment or populist versus non-popular, whatever. What I prefer is I think this divide covers it. What do you think government's role is in our economy? So I'm going to sum it up very easily. And any economists out there and things like that, I know I'm giving a very high level view on this and I'm not taking a deep dive here, but basically Keynesian economics is a belief that government has a role that when there's downtimes economically, we can spend our ways out of it. We can inject money into the system and that will get economy rolling, which will cause things to go. And when there's a dip or something like that, it is because a government can fix it, and dips occur and then government can fix it. Austrian economics is a belief that an entire economy going down or entire economy even going up, booms and busts as an entire economy, is a phenomenon that is caused by government playing around and central banking, playing around in our economics. In individual industry, we'll see booms and busts, maybe based upon market behaviors or based upon certain situations. It really just depends on, like NFTs or things like that get introduced. It's new, it's shiny, it's a boom. And then there's a bust that goes on because of it, right? And there's some other examples of this occurring throughout all of history on various items about booms and busts in individual industries. But an entire market booming and busting, Austrian economics says, is because government won't stop touching things. And so basically stating that, like I said, individual markets boom and bust, but the entire market to go up is created by things like interest rates and playing around with that, or central banking playing around and creating false demands. And we certainly see this in our current economic situation. I mean, what we're seeing in our current economic situation is that the government played around a lot with the economy. In fact, everybody thought the economy would be going gangbusters coming out of the recession, or coming out of the depression we were kind of in from the COVID stuff. Thought they would see a good boom. But because Biden had to touch everything and had to mess with it and put in place things like whether that's regulations and central banking, playing with interest rates, things like that, it created this massive inflation, pumping money into the economy when it was certainly not needed. It creates these booms and busts. But Keynesian economics is based on the idea that central planning, that there's somebody, these people just know best. And this is what's really key, I think, people in government need to remember. We are not God. You're not God. We cannot be everything for everybody. We do not have that vast amount of knowledge. And just creating a system that is relying upon really good people running it is a recipe for failure of a governmental system, because you cannot guarantee that good people are always going to run it, as we're seeing right now, as we're seeing Joe Biden just literally destroy everything. And people want to say, well, it's not it's the president's fault. Yeah, it is. It is. It's his fault. And people can say, well, there's economic issues going around the world. Yeah, well, that's because around the world, they also depend upon America as well, which is causing some of these other countries to stop depending upon America so much, which is going to be even worse for us going forward in the future, and will take away our clout and ability and everything else. So the point is in the Republican Party, the split, there are Republicans and this is the McConnell people and things like that believe government is a good that can do good in the economy, and they can create opportunity. And if they just regulate this right, or they just do this right, they will create economic opportunities. You see this all the time. We saw it here in Kentucky with the Ford plant, where they dumped $500 million, or battery plants, dumped $500 million into battery plants, believing that it'll stimulate the economy of Kentucky. And then you have Republicans that believe that government's role is not to play around in our economics, is that to allow the market, the collective knowledge of the market is far better and stronger and a better indicator than a couple of central people who believe, or even a couple hundred central people who believe they know best. If anything has taught us over the last several years, experts are not nearly as expert as we thought they were. And so I just want to bring that up for a second. I want to encourage you guys, read about Austrian economics and Keynesian economics and kind of see what the difference is. And you can understand a lot more why we are where we are and how we fix it going forward. And I encourage you to read both and understand it and do a Google or two or something. Well, anyways, guys, that's what I have for you. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for watching and listening. As always, Tuesdays at noon, it'll be live on Facebook. It'll be posted on YouTube. Tuesday mornings, I believe we post it right around 5:30 a.m. on the podcast form. You can catch it there. Remember to comment, share, subscribe, tell people about us. Let's keep it going. Thank you guys so much, and have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon.